just before we start the show, I want to take an opportunity to invite you to join me for the Podfluence Weekly newsletter, which is available both on LinkedIn and through the official newsletter channel. Now, if you are on LinkedIn and it's easier for you to follow there, then please just click on the link in the show notes, which will take you straight to Podfluence on LinkedIn, where you can subscribe for free and get weekly updates on Podfluence articles as well as episodes. If you would like to subscribe to the full newsletter where you'll get additional materials and, as my little incentive to you, my pre-podcast guest checklist for you to use when you're appearing on podcast shows so that you can be fully prepared every single time, then please click the link to the official newsletter in the show notes. Hope to see you there. Let's get on with the show.
Welcome to the show. My name's Johnny Ball. This is Speaking Influence. This is the show where we talk about the psychology and ethical application of influence and persuasion in life and mostly in business, helping you to become a more powerful persuader and also allowing you to build authority and influence with your business. This week, we're going to be talking about data storytelling. And if you don't know what that is, well, if you ever have to deliver any kind of information, statistics or research, you'll know that it can be sometimes difficult to make sure that that's done in a way that is engaging and even exciting for people, that they understand what's going on with it and that it's not putting people to sleep. The last thing you want is people checking their messages or playing games on their phone whilst you are giving a presentation or a talk about how some particular data or information or research is relevant to what they need to know. So it's absolutely essential that we get good at telling stories with data if we need to do that in any part of our professional lives. And my guest is Sam Knowles. He is a professional data storyteller. He has written about data storytelling as well, and he has a podcast about big data, which he hosts with several other people who work in his industry. They talk about a lot of the issues going on with big data in the world, obviously a lot of the stuff that's going on with the likes of Facebook and other issues that are affecting all parts of our lives right now. I hope you'll enjoy this show, and that if you do have to deliver any kind of data in your own professional life, that you'll find something from here that you can take away and apply in your own professional work. A quick apology to regular listeners to the show that there has been a delay in production here at Casa Johnny, and I'm doing my very best to get back on top of things. This is really just been due to an overload of work and some recent not feeling very well, and also a few technical problems as well that have just piled on top of each other. So the show is returning to a normal schedule. I'll be getting caught up on shows as quickly as possible and resuming our regular frequency of shows. So please look out for that and accept my apologies if you've been waiting for the next show to come out. Please do make sure you are subscribed to the show, though, so that as soon as the shows do come out, you get notified and they are there straight away for you if you are following the show. For now, enjoy Persuasion with Data Storytelling with my guest, Sam Knowles.
Welcome to Speaking Influence, the show that explores the psychology and application of ethical influence and persuasion in life and business with persuasive presentations and podcasting coach, Johnny Ball. If you're a coach, speaker, or course creator and you would like to have a simple online ecosystem for your business where you can create funnels, build an integrated website, sell and host courses and live programs, build your list with lead magnets, manage your sales, create communities, and so much more in a way that is affordable and fully supported, you will love New Zenler. You can try everything out for free, and if you love it, you can register for monthly or discounted annual billing. Don't pay for multiple services that you have to link up manually. Get an online solution that does everything you need in one place. Find the link in the show notes and try New Zenler as the all-in-one solution for your business today.
Welcome to the show. We are going to be talking about data storytelling today. And if you don't have a clue what that's about, then you definitely need to stick around and listen in. Let me welcome to the show my guest who's going to tell us all about what data storytelling is and maybe a bit more besides. Welcome, Sam Knowles.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Love to see you.
It's great to have you with me, and I've been looking forward to speaking with you as well. We had a great chat a while back now while we were planning for all of this, and I knew it was going to be a good chat to come and speak to you today. Before we get into the stuff we're here to talk about, let's just get a bit more of an idea about who you are. So if you could invite anyone to a dinner party, it could be someone from history, someone fictional, it could be someone who's around now. Who would you choose and why?
Professor Sir David Spiegelhalter, who runs the Winton Centre for Communicating Risk at the University of Cambridge. I've met him. I've been involved in a workshop with him. I had great fun with him. He is one of the very few people, I think it's fair to say, who has had a good pandemic. So Spiegelhalter runs this. He's former president of the Royal Statistical Society. He's a public intellectual. He's written a beautiful book called The Art of Statistics, quite technical, but beautifully expressed. He has a team of experimental psychologists that work with him, and they are expert in communicating risk under uncertainty. He's also been on Wipeout, the BBC game show. Right. I think he came 7th in Wipeout. He knows his way around South American wine. But most importantly, as a kind of hero data storyteller, he has been very, very public throughout the pandemic and indeed before. He's the guy who set up, there's a Radio 4, but it's a podcast streamable worldwide, a program called More or Less, which is all about statistics in the news presented by the FT's under the FT's Tim Harford. And I think David has done more than anyone else for not simplifying, but bringing to the public attention how to tell stories with data and statistics and how not to bamboozle people. So David would be there. He's good fun, but also we'd probably have a good chat.
I'm imagining not too many people would have predicted that answer, but it's great. And I have a feeling you thought about it before, Sam. So
it was entirely off the cuff. I promise you it was entirely off the cuff. But I was just looking through his book only yesterday. So perhaps that was why.
There you go. Good answer. And I appreciate you sharing that with us as well. We're here to talk about data storytelling. Now, let's first of all set scene for what we are actually talking about here, because we've had guests on the show talking about storytelling before, amongst other things, and how important that is in the world of influence and persuasion, a really critical part of that, and public speaking besides. What is data storytelling, and how did you come to be such a data storyteller?
Okay, the first is going to be shorter than the second, but I'll try not to give you my whole resume. So a data storyteller is somebody who builds powerful and persuasive narratives and empathetic. They are designed to move people to not necessarily change their opinion, but to get them to think or act or believe something different. So they are stories, they are narratives, they will obey rules of narrative structure, Aristotelian beginning, middle and end, 3-part structure. They will respect the audience. But in respecting the audience, in this world of bigger and bigger data, I think it is fewer and fewer organizations and individuals who speak on behalf of organizations who actually take the time to be human and empathetic and understand that there is this thing, the curse of knowledge, right? The curse of knowledge, described by the Harvard psychologist Steve Pinker in an excellent book called The Sense of Style, The Thinking Person's Guide to Writing in the 21st Century. The curse of knowledge is the difficulty of understanding or of realizing that people do not know something that you yourself know. It's really difficult. You can't unlearn. Well, you can forget stuff, but it's hard to unlearn stuff.
Yeah.
But in corporate and brand and government and academic institution, in all forms of communication, data matters. There is more and more data surrounding all of us. There are many who make the fundamental mistake, or they suffer from the curse of knowledge, and they do not realize that those they're talking to do not know nearly as much about the topic of their expertise as they do. And they believe that by showing their workings out and by drowning those they're looking to influence with data and statistics, they're going to win out. Now, that just does not work. It makes people turn off. Before I tell you how I came to be one, I want to tell you I was on a research debrief. It was not research I had done. It's a research that's a market research agency had done during the pandemic, very senior clients. And there weren't hundreds, but there were dozens of slides that showed that this hadn't changed, this hadn't changed, this hadn't changed, this hadn't changed. And it took the most senior client 5 minutes to get so bored. She didn't do her emails, that intense stare that you see when people aren't. She didn't do emails. She started playing Yahtzee on her phone. Now, I know she started playing Yahtzee because she was wearing glasses and it reflected off them. Now,
Oops.
that is, I think, the definition of bad storytelling, the person that you want to influence first. But it's really bad data storytelling. So data storytelling, building powerful persuasive narratives that use data as their underpinning, that you make judicious, human, empathetic use of data in a way that avoids this curse of knowledge, that finds and uses only relevant data, and realizes or reflects that we make our decisions emotionally. We only go on to justify them rationally. The ancient reptilian and limbic parts of the brain is where we make our decisions. The work of Princeton psychologist, Pinker's opposite number, Daniel Kahneman, Mr. Thinking Fast and Slow. His work with Amos Tversky over his life, I think they've established a number of things. One of those things is that we are emotional decision makers. Now, the bit of the brain that says, I'm going to vote for this person, buy this product, support this cause, it doesn't have any access to language, let alone data or information or statistics. It's the uniquely human cerebral cortices, the grey and white matter that surround those old bits of the brain, that go on to say, and I've chosen to vote for this person or to buy this product because they're aligned with me, because it's got the best miles per gallon, because it'll make me smell nice. But those are post-decision-making, post-rationalizations. And if you start with data and you try and drown people with data or browbeat them into submission, you will fail. Cognitive Psychology 101 will tell us we will put up a wall if you try and do that. There is something in the psychological literature now known as the Project Fear phenomenon. And I make not a political point at all, but you may remember that Leave had a single statistic that they repeated ad nauseam, Cummings and Johnson's daft bus, that number, the 350 million, and Project and Leave dubbed Remain in the UK Project Fear in the EU referendum, because they would bring forward the head of the Bank of England, and their data was just a tsunami. And I think one of the reasons for the failure of Remain was their very, very poor data storytelling.
Well, yeah, that and the data manipulation that they did behind the scenes with Cambridge Analytica, and that they cheated. There's a lot. There would be a lot there to unpack.
I don't even want to. So I said that would be a short answer, but that was your first question. I hope that's a good definition of what a data storyteller may be.
It is, and I've had some people on the show before talking about how you deliver maybe what would be dry informational content in an engaging and interactive way. But this is a very different aspect of that. I'm talking about really being able to deliver data and statistics in a way that is still going to appeal to all those parts that people really connect to. I mean, I could see there could be a potential advantage to having people so bored out their brains that they want to be playing Yahtzee on their phones. If you want to be implanting some subliminal hypnotic suggestion or something like that, that could be your opportunity to do it. But I don't think that's going to be particularly beneficial in most cases.
I mean, I'm completely with you. Dan Pink, the American business writer, he wrote a book called To Sell Is Human. And in To Sell Is Human, he says that we are all in the moving business. We're all in the persuading business. And that's true whether we're a doctor who wants her patients to take drugs or to the end of a course, or a teacher who wants his pupils to do homework and revise, or a political orator or a marketeer, or whoever we may be. We want to get a reaction. It may not be that we want to get agreement. It may not be that we want to get assent. But it's much better, I think, if we are in the moving business, to get a reaction rather than just a kind of meh or a game of Yahtzee, however subliminally the messages may be being implanted. You want to get a reaction out of people. And I think that the data-heavy, injudicious, kind of sick on a page, showing your workings out, it just doesn't work. And in a hyper-connected world, let's say it's a commercial decision you're making. If I go on to Company X's website and I am just bamboozled, and it happens very often we're such experts here in this B2B sector, and then I kind of lose the will to read on, and then I find somebody who's got exactly the same product, but they talk to me in a human way, and they give me a couple of killer statistics that show how it's going to improve my productivity. I'm going there. I'm absolutely going there. Absolutely.
What makes someone become or want to become a data storyteller?
Well, you know that that old line of the Irish American who goes looking for his heritage in rural County Cork or whatever, and then bumps into a farmer and says, "Can you tell me how I'd get to Dublin?" Well, and the farmer says, "Well, I wouldn't start from here." I mean, I can't recommend people follow my path. Not that I've had a bad time, but it took a long time, and it's a bit convoluted. So when I was at school, I was, as they say, badly taught mathematics. Here's a data storyteller who's telling you he was badly taught. I was badly taught. I mean, I always say that there were more animal noises than algebra going on in my maths. My 5th out of 6, I was in set 5. Our maths teacher had worked at Bletchley. I mean, he was a great person, and us bad at maths gave him a terrible, terrible time. Anyway, so that meant I did what I could do. And what I could do was Latin and Greek and ancient history. Those were my A-levels, and that was my first degree. And I fell in love with story and story structure. And, you know, they did the Greeks in particular. I wasn't so fond of the Romans. The Greeks in particular invented a lot of really interesting things. They invented comedy and tragedy and epic poetry. Those were the 3 forms of entertainment. And they had, you know, wise philosophers who wrote stuff down. Also, other philosophers like Socrates who wrote nothing down, but people read more of his words than anybody else, certainly in direct speech. And then Aristotle wrote this really thin and readable, particularly a translation. It's very readable, a translation book called The Poetics, where he picked apart what it was. He gave us 2. He gave lots of things in it, but 2, one about story structure. So beginning, middle, and end. He called it thesis, antithesis, synthesis. You know, the 3-part structure that then Cicero went on to popularize. I know you've talked with Cicero fans historically, but he also gave us pathos, logos, and ethos. So emotion, logic, and character of the person who is giving. And those 2 sets of 3 are pretty good. And so I went out into the world, became a communicator, worked in agencies, worked in-house, did PR, and was enjoying that, was enjoying telling stories for the old Health Education Authority in the UK and the conscience of the booze industry, all these clients you get when you work in an agency. But after about a dozen years, I felt that there was something else. I felt I was working at the time. Can you believe there were 11 variants of Flora margarine? There were. I was working for all of them. Low fat, buttery, cholesterol lowering. Anyway, and Barbie. That was my life. You know, they were great clients, but managed to irritate. Actually, this is PR notoriety. Managed to irritate Naomi Klein in the 2nd edition of No Logo. She got very cross with us painting a street in Manchester pink for Barbie's 40th birthday. Anyway, I thought there had to be more to life than lard or yellow fat, as we call this in the agency, and Barbie. And so I went to a vocational psychologist, and she said that she did my first ever set of psychometric tests. Never had that happen before. And she said, "Oh, you're really interested in psychology. I think you should retrain as a psychologist of some description." And I'm quite literal, and I thought, yeah, that's a good idea. I like that. And so I found out that I already had this degree in classics, so I could go and do a master's, and there were 3 great master's courses. So I I had to teach myself the first year of syllabus, sat the exams, got in, resigned, went on a round the world trip for 6 months, and then strolled in, you know, October 2000. And the first 2 hours of my new life were a statistics lecture. And my heart just fell through the floor. I thought, what have you done? You've given up a 6-figure salary in a West End agency, and you've moved to the sticks, and what have you done? I had a diversion. I was getting married 2 days later, so I had a diversion. But actually, after about half an hour, I realized in this 2-hour statistics lecture that I didn't realize that I suddenly had this new language, but I had 2 brilliant teachers. One did lots of work all around motorbikes and motorbike accidents and minimizing those. And those were his examples. And the other one used the Radio 1 playlist, or commercial radio playlists as well, and fictitious creatures that he used in his research to try and scare 3- and 4-year-olds and find out the truth about phobias. And so the examples were real world, or pretend world, but they were very associable. And I massively overcompensated because I was so worried that one, fell in love with psychology. I'd always been interested in human motivation and behavior. Yeah. I was getting some professional rigor there. And 2, with statistics. And so after I stayed there. I did a master's and then a doctorate in psychology. And my doctoral thesis is 120,000 words, of which 70,000 are statistical analysis. If I say so myself, it's even readable. I don't think many people have read it, but it was all about alcohol and emotion, but that is another story. And so, but I'd found this new language. So I had English, clearly, and Latin and Greek and Sanskrit, and then statistics. And in 2004-05, I was coming back out into the world of consultancy, and data was suddenly starting to be important in PR and marketing, and Facebook had been born, and Twitter was just around the corner, and academic papers. I could read academic papers and make sense of the data in there. And so I'd be chucked papers or data, and they said, can you make sense of that? And I did. And then I worked in marketing analytics for a bit, and so I got to carry on using this. And then when I set up my own business nearly 8 years ago now, it was clear to me that there wasn't really much of a there wasn't much of a market. There wasn't much of a supply in people who could make sense of data on behalf of companies and then use that for creative, human, emotional storytelling. So, as I say, I wouldn't start from here. Don't go and do 3 degrees. You don't need to do that.
No, let's not do that. But, it's an interesting thing because most people's eyes will have glazed over by the time you've even finished saying data and statistical analysis. So making those kinds of things interesting or relevant to people, you already have the work cut out there, but you have been doing that. Who are the people you think most need to know about that and how to do it?
So that's interesting. So I mentioned Pinker in his book, The Sense of Style. And not only does he talk about what this curse of knowledge is, he also goes on to finger the 5 groups of people who he thinks are the worst perpetrators of this. And so academics, he starts off with academics. He's fair enough to have a go at his own people. Mm-hmm. And actually, I was rereading, I'm giving a talk in a couple of weeks about this curse of knowledge, specifically on that. And I was rereading his chapter in that book about the curse of knowledge. And he gives some examples. He quotes some examples from his field. So his area, he's written lots and lots of books about society and anger and all sorts of different things over the years. But his core area of specific knowledge is sentence structure. He worked with Chomsky at MIT for many years. He's now at Harvard, but that was his thing about how he's got a book called Words and Rules, which is all about regular and irregular plurals. I mean, you wouldn't think it was possible to make that interesting, but he does. He went on to write books, called How the Mind Works. It's rather more associable. Anyway, but he quotes some people from his field that he just doesn't understand from people on the same. He quotes papers from people that he's presenting alongside a specialist linguistic. No idea what the words mean. So academics is one. Government officials is another. And when I mentioned Spiegelhalter, who's coming to dinner tomorrow night, I can't wait. And I don't know where we're going to be going.
It's going to be a fun dinner party. I don't know what we'll be serving yet, but yeah.
Over the course of the last 18 months, a pandemic world, I think we have realized that what some politicians said, and again, during the EU referendum in the UK, we've had enough of experts with their acronyms. Well, that very same politician, who will remain nameless, in giving a government press conference, was only able to talk to his 2 experts. He had no way of answering the questions because he needed experts. But government officials, the catastrophe, and I've got quite a good blog on it, and Spiegelhalter wrote a very good article on it too, the catastrophe of I called it the nightmare on Downing Street, the Halloween press conference to justify the second lockdown that wasn't a lockdown in the UK. The curse of knowledge, data overload that was used in a panicky Saturday attempt to justify. Government officials are often really bad at it. I think some of them have got better during the course of the pandemic. I mean, I think it depends on the cards that they're dealt, but the chief medical officer, chief scientific officer have mostly done a good thing, but government officials are often very bad at it. The legal profession and the financial advice community are 2 that, Pinker says their entire success is predicated on the curse of knowledge, that they don't explain to you what, they speak to you in Latin if they're lawyers, and they talk about compound interest to people who were as scared of maths as I was at school, and they just confused them. And they said, don't worry, we'll look after it, £300 an hour, please. And then scientists are the last. So I think they are definitely in the firing line. I would add one more, and I'm not trying to cut my nose to spite my face here. I do a lot of work with market research companies. I do a lot of training in the data storytelling area.
I thought you were going to say podcasters there for a minute. I was getting worried.
Never. Well, no, never. Absolutely. No, definitely not. Not least because I dabble a bit myself. But no, the market research, I love working with market researchers, partly because they have often really interesting data, often presented in the most dull as ditchwater way. But market researchers, the number of times I have been in a research debrief with a client or whatever it may be, and they'll flip open the laptop and it'll say you can, if it's already connected to the projector, I'm talking about the pre-Zoom days, or pre-pandemic days, and you'll see slides 1 to 162. And you think, no, awful. Actually, can I just tell you a quick story? I once had a global consumer goods client, and I was warned before I went to go and see him, not really to have a long presentation. And he was a very irascible, half French, half Italian, who spent all of his time rubbing the back of his head in irritation and breaking pencils and biros throughout the meeting. And I opened my laptop, and I had some, they were mostly picture slides, right? Even if it was 15 years ago, it was a very human presentation. And he looked down and he saw it said slides 1 to 32. And he grabbed my laptop from me, and he highlighted slides 21 to 32, hit delete, hit save to desktop, and said, right, now you can present to me because I don't do more than 20 slides. And now I think that was an act of not only passive, but active aggression. But what we did was, I said, shall I just close the laptop and we'll have a conversation? And he stopped breaking pencils and relaxed. And I think that the market research, I wouldn't do this to my lovely market research industry clients, but I think market researchers, that two things. One, they very often feel they need, because they've done this work, they're keen to take you through the process they're taking you through. But that, again, I'm afraid is a bit of a curse of knowledge. The other thing about it is that when I'm running this training and coaching and development, they are the fastest learners. And you go back and see them in 6 months' time, and there's no need to intervene anymore, because someone for the first time has held up a mirror to them and said, do you know what it feels like to be in your audience, to see 162 slide feedback? Google have a rule that if you're doing research for them, you're allowed to present 3 slides with no more than 3 bullet points. And I know having heard, some of your other interviews, I was listening to one with Simon Raybould, the curse of the bullet point, but Google will allow bullet points, 3 bullet points per slide maximum. Although, if you have no bullet points or just a picture, that's even better. And then 1 data point per slide. And then PowerPoint or Keynote or Prezi or whatever you want to use, they're amazing tools, because you can put a break slide that says appendix, and then you can have all of your data. And I've got a friend who's a fly fisherman who he took me fly fishing only once, but I didn't enjoy it. But it just
wasn't J.R. Hartley, was it?
Oh no, sadly not. But he does have the same initials, so maybe. But he cast. What you want to do, I think, with data is to intrigue and pique interest as part of the story. It's the underpinning. You want people to say, "That's interesting. Tell me more. How can you justify that?" Surely the numbers don't say that. That goes against all of the thinking that we've ever had in this organization. Or I don't agree with that. Or, yeah, I had a hunch about that, but can you tell me more? And then you go to the appendix and say, yeah, look, we've got this, this, and this. But not the other way around, because you can't win the other way around. You can only win if you intrigue and pique their interest and get them to say, tell me more.
Well, that really leads us into talking more about the influence and persuasion side of data storytelling. So we have to pique their interest. We have to have people hooked into this. So we've alluded to some of these things. Let's maybe just lay it out as to how you go about influencing and persuading with data storytelling.
So I'll certainly say some of the things I've said already. So let's start with the French mathematician Blaise Pascal and Mark Twain. And it's another dinner party for you. All white men, I'm afraid to say. But Blaise Pascal, Mark Twain, Winston Churchill, and Oscar Wilde, they are all said to have said, and probably some were quoting each other, I would have written you a shorter letter, but I didn't have the time. And for me, that is, the very busyness of business, particularly business, but not also academia, the busyness of the knowledge economy, right, means that people feel that they don't have the time to sift the data down, that they want to show it all to you. So that, the first starting point would be to follow what Pascal and Twain and the others said, and to force yourself. when you're building, what are you writing? You're writing a one-page memo for a minister. You're writing a research debrief. You're writing a PowerPoint presentation to win some new business. You're writing a report of the media campaign. It doesn't matter what you're doing. It really, you're writing a lesson plan for year 13 psychology. First of all, think about who's going to be in the room. I mean, I'm sure you've had lots and lots of people talking about the vital importance of knowing your audience.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I think that is interesting is using data to help you understand who your audience is. I don't want to be abstruse about it, but one of my favorite campaigns, and it's a very effective campaign, public health education campaign, has been run by a body called Sport England, called This Girl Can, and it's about empowering girls aged 14 to women aged 70 to take more active part in sport.
I remember
lots of awards. Yeah, it's a great campaign. And they realized about 8 years ago now that there was a sustained gender exercise gap between boys and men up to 70 and girls and women of the same age. Partly that was down to football, and partly the increasing popularity of girls and women's football is helping to address that. There was something else. And so they looked at what were the drivers, particularly the drags on exercise in this very big and diverse group. And they discovered that of those girls and women that didn't take exercise, fully 85% of them said they didn't do so because they were afraid of being judged by others. Now, even under a pandemic where, one was allowed under strict lockdowns only to go out once a day, nobody notices anybody else exercising, apart from the small group of people that do notice them. A delicious 85% of those that do notice think, that's impressive, I should do that. I'm really impressed she's out there doing it. And that's why in the Campaign for Real Beauty, in This Girl Can, another one of my favorite campaigns, in This Girl, that's why real women really exercising feature in all the 6 films that there have been so far, because they are motivational, real role models. There are great things to be said for Jessica Ennis-Hill, the one of the heroes of London 2012, both in terms of commercial side, but also in terms of messaging and success. But that's unattainable. It's unattainable for people who are couch potatoes. Like I was long a couch potato. I not motivated by This Girl Can, but I started running 10 years ago because a couple of friends on the school run were doing the couch to 5K. And this was something I could do before it got light early in the morning. I'm still an early morning running. I was out early this morning, but the motivation. So using data to really understand who your audience are, but actually often you're asked to speak at an event. You've got your quarterly sales meeting with the chief financial officer. You know your audience. It's bring your parents to school day, and it's tell year 2 about what you do. You know who your audience are. If it's the marketing department, this is an unfair caricature, but it used to be called the colouring in department. You might use less data with them than finance and analytics. But so first of all, know your audience, and perhaps you might even need to use some data to help to specify what that audience is. But then put in the Blaise Pascal to Oscar Wilde effort of writing a shorter letter, of finding and using only truly relevant data. I mean, I'm a big fan of public health education campaigns. I guess it's where communication and science can often meet. There was, in the UK, and excuse my UK examples, but that's where I am. In about 6-7 years ago, the British Heart Foundation, big charity, wanted to change people's understanding of what you needed to do if someone had a heart attack. Most people think you're supposed to give a lot of people thought that you're supposed to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. And because that's a very technical skill and people are a bit grossed out by somebody dying in front of them, having to kiss them, it almost always fails. I mean, so they wanted to prevent people doing that. And so what they did was they got Vinnie Jones, the former Wimbledon footballer and B-movie actor, Hardman, to demonstrate dressed up as a kind of Guy Ritchie East End villain with a couple of hoods, to demonstrate on someone who just had a heart attack in front of them, and another actor, to demonstrate the 110 to 120 beats per minute that you need to be pushing. And it just so happens that the planners on this campaign realized that was the beat of Staying Alive by the Bee Gees. So you have Staying Alive, which is a great message, one, but two, you have the ridiculous juxtaposition of Vinnie Jones as a East End hard man, a disused bus garage, to a 70s disco classic. So you've got an emotional message there. You've got a clash.
Works pretty well.
I mean, his henchmen in the back are kind of they're disco dancing in the most unhenchman-like way, and so you've got that. But you've got this single killer statistic of 110 to 120 beats per minute, and if you're in a panic situation and someone's had a heart attack, partly because the song dates from the late 70s, but almost everybody knows the Bee Gees Staying Alive, so you can you could sing it to yourself. And in terms of lives saved, I don't think it's possible to measure that. In terms of public awareness and understanding, because situations are complex, but awareness and understanding of that single piece of information, 110 to 100. I mean, in that campaign, they did one other thing, which was you need to push down about 5, because the UK couldn't decide between metric and imperial. But they wanted to appeal to a broad audience. They say, push down about 5 or 6 centimeters. That's about 2 inches in old money, says Mr. Jones. Better a cracked rib than he kicks the bucket. Well, I mean, that's, as a piece of data storytelling, it tells you how fast you need to do it, how far you need to do it. They've really worked hard to find and use relevant data. And in terms of understanding, it went through the roof and it won awards, but it won awards because it was an effective piece of communication. So know your audience, spend time to find and use only truly relevant data, and be sparing and judicious in that. Don't browbeat people into submission. Get them to say, do you know what, Johnny, that's really interesting. Tell me more, or I disagree, or are you sure? What's your evidence for that? Rather than lining up your erudition in front of them. Those would be 3 pretty good starting points, I'd say.
Yeah. So when you're putting a presentation together in this sort of manner, I'm guessing that's part of your process. There's some elements you can take us through for how you go about structuring it. It's pretty much the same in other ways as you might do any other kind of speaking, or are there any specific things in addition that you would make sure you need to bring in here?
That's such a good question. Cobbler's children's shoes. I hope it won't be a case of cobbler's children's shoes. So I always want to start, with the audience in mind. And this is a training exercise, but I do it on myself every time. So I will write 150-word pen portrait of who's going to be in the room, on the Zoom, wherever it's going to be. And there may be diverse people in that room, but I'll always write myself a pen portrait, which will give me a sense of what their data tolerance might be. Now, that's not to say that I will want to, there are other decent rules of storytelling that I'm sure your other guests will have talked to you about not using acronyms and initialisms and abbreviations and avoiding jargon. There's a American TED talker or TEDx talker, Kathy Klotz Guest, who coined this fantastic phrase of jargon monoxide poisoning. I can't claim that for myself, but I love that. All of the kind of the Dilbert cartoons you see of, the public is starting to understand it. It's time for more jargon, that those sort of panics. So I think data tolerance is something to bear in mind when creating a pen portrait. Then, I'm quite structuring a presentation. I've done I've developed 2 totally new talks, one that I'm giving shortly after we talk and one that I'm giving in a couple of weeks. And I go for IKEA, but I'm sure other people sell them too, but IKEA sell them cheaply, these long rolls of white paper that you put over a TV easel. Yeah, and you rip them off, you do another one. So I've got a long kitchen table and I've got one of those and I'll roll it out. And I'm afraid I'm a Post-it note fan, and different kind of Post-it notes mean different things, but I will start entirely analog. I'll start by taking notes, and then I might do a kind of a rough, I want to cover this and this. And then on my big piece of paper, which, can go, our tables can extend up to 20 feet long. So it can be a long story if you want it to be, but I will map out the sections, and I'll want there to be, Aristotle, and so you can take classics out of the man, but you can't take the man out of classics, or whatever. Maybe it's the other way around. I'll want it to be friends, Roman countrymen. I want to tell them what I'm going to tell them. I'll want to tell it to them, or I want to tell them that I've told it to them. And then but pink Post-its, vibrant pink Post-its, for me, signify data points. And in the broad brush. Let's say there are going to be 3 sections and there might be 3 sections within each section. I don't know. I don't know how complex. I'm going to ration myself. And if I see more than one data point in each key section, I'm going to have to make a choice. I'll force myself to make a choice. I mean, I've got rhetorical devices that, particularly if it's an interactive session, that I can get people, I don't mean in a sort of Darren Brown mind control way. I'm not that skilled, but there are rhetorical devices that one can use to get people to ask you to explain more or to give you a bit more data. But I'll map it out in that way. And actually the PowerPointing process is mostly spent looking for royalty-free images rather than, I would never I'd never start writing something using the artificial construct, the linear thinking of, I'm a Mac man, but I use PowerPoint because almost all my clients are PC people. And fortunately these days it's pretty one for one. I never put the time in for Keynote, or I think it's rather more elegant. It's got rather more elegant elements to it. But by far the majority will be thinking about, what's the golden thread? What is the thesis and the antithesis, and how do we bring them together? And then what role role does data play in this, and how can we use data to make this story stronger? It comes right at the beginning in terms of what is the data tolerance of my audience, but it comes really right at the end in terms of just before we get into actually using PowerPoint to do it.
Yeah. So if we want to model your process, I like that you're very analog about it. One of my favorite places to go to, somewhere that I will always look for an excuse to let myself go to, is a stationery store. Bookstores and stationery stores, they're like where I like to be, and I can never resist. Even when I don't need it, I love going there and buying stationery, especially things like Post-it notes and big rolls of paper, all of that kind of stuff. Highlighter pens,
You never know. Oh, yeah, I mean, highlighter pens, absolutely. By the way, I'll hold up this little pen here. I mean, this is a stalwart, but I my nickname for that is the planner's pen. I can't, the different colors mean different things in different meetings and different sets of notes. But I love, rather than picking up another pen, I love the ability to say, right, this is going to mean data, and this is going to mean structure, and this is going to mean quotes or whatever, or this is going to mean where we need to have something more visual. And no, I'm deeply, deeply analog about it. But I mean, almost every slide doesn't have the words that come out of the mouth. The data points may well be there, but the data points, one, it's a minor hint and tip, but I'm a big fan of having numbers very big. If your killer statistic is 110 to 120 beats per minute, I would just have that almost as the only thing on the slide. If that's what you wanted, I've done that. I mean, what I'll usually do is show that ad, but if I've not got time, or technology, just to have those words. I mean, I know very often one doesn't need to have any kind of visual aid at all. It can help with structure. I mean, it can well be that it's something that you play to yourself on a separate laptop just so that you know where you are. But I think it's, very, very, very analog. Lots of Post-its.
I'm a fan of that methodology myself. I like to start off analog and then transfer to digital afterwards for storage, for backup. And because, if you lose your analog stuff, it's too painful to not have it backed up in some way, shape or form. Now, I know that I have come across lots of books about storytelling. I've read lots of books about storytelling. I still do love reading. Probably not so many about data storytelling, but you have written a book, Narrative by Numbers. What is the key reason that people are going to read that book, and what will they take away from it?
Well, it won't be the jokes, although there are some, and it won't be the anecdotes about odd members of my family that sit in the footnotes, although there are plenty of those too. So I think that as you say, there are lots of books about storytelling, and quite a lot of those, and the training and the coaching around them, say we've had enough of data. Data's taken over. Data's really got in the way. And what we need to do is to get back to, things that I feel passionate about too. We need to get back to Aristotle. And I say, but you can introduce, if you join these two things together, you're going to be more powerful if you do it in the right way, using the type of prescriptions I've set out. But a lot of them will have no truck with data. There are lots and lots of brilliant books and courses and MOOCs and all sorts of things about data visualization. And most courses and books about data storytelling are about deleting chart junk. That's what they're about. They're about using. I mean, I think one of the. I think he's the best. Data visualizer is a guy called David McCandless, who's written a book called Information is Beautiful a number of years ago. The stuff that he has done about relative and absolute risk around COVID, his COVID dashboard, if there's room for it in your show notes, I'll send you a link. It's stunning. Data visualization is something different. Florence Nightingale was a brilliant data visualizer. She convinced Queen Victoria with a famous chart. She demonstrated what was happening with infection in field hospitals that changed hospital history, not just British military history. There's that amazing piece of data visualization from the 19th century by a guy called Dr. John Snow, all about the spread of cholera from a hand pump in Broadwick Street in Soho, who was dying, who lived near or far away from this. This is in a pre-microscopic or a pre-understanding of microbial dates. Amazing. But most books and courses and stuff around data storytelling are about data visualization. Data visualization is a great skill and doing it brilliantly, but it comes after the story.
Yeah.
And so I think people should read it, one, because it's kind of fun and breezy, but much more importantly, because it shows you how, the worlds of analytics and storytelling are nice. I think there are two reasons for that. Two problems. One is a problem with education that makes most people in most Western cultures in particular specialize to be artists or scientists and not to blend the two. That's not always the case, but often it is. And then there's a problem with psychology. And I think there's a gross oversimplification and misrepresentation of cognitive function that believes that there is a left brain and a right brain.
Yeah.
The fact that we've managed to get along for the past 40 odd minutes and have this conversation, there are hundreds of things in both sides of both of our brains taking place simultaneously, joined together through a bundle of fibers in the middle that depend on one another. I talked about rational and emotional, rational decision justification and emotional decision making. In terms of verbal production, there's a bit of the brain on this side that produces words and understands what words mean, and there's a bit of the brain on this side that joins them together into syntax. But the two can't work without each other. They need to be joined together. So I think there's a problem with education, problem with psychology that has, and also some psychologists willfully misrepresenting, particularly in the age of fMRI scanners. Look, this bit of the brain lights up when we do this. Therefore, it has to be this. That's what it does. Not quite sure that's.
Yeah, I don't think we're quite there with the brain mapping yet. There's a long way to go with all of that understanding. Yeah.
But also one other thing, also kind of popular media misconception. We like there to be single causes for things. We want the Gulf War to be all about oil. We want Leicester City winning the Premier League in 2016 to be all about Claudio Ranieri. I don't know. We want there to be single solution, but actually there are multiple interacting solutions. That's true with the brain. But the popular media have fed on this, and they talk about, I used to work with a business that described itself as the left brain advisor to the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer. That's fine, but actually, if you only appeal to his or her left brain, he won't be able to understand what the words mean because, silly.
Indeed. Well, good. So it's definitely a book that's well worth checking out, especially if you want to really understand storytelling in that kind of capacity as well. There's another book on the way as well.
There is. So the first one's about data storytelling. I wrote a sequel, modestly titled "How to Be Insightful" last year, all about insightful thinking. Again, how one uses data. And then the third in the, let's call it the Using Data Smarter trilogy. The third one is called Asking Smarter Questions. So I've spent a lot of the course of this year talking to people whose jobs, Nobel Prize winning biochemists, to the head of West Yorkshire Police after Sutcliffe, after the Yorkshire Ripper, who had to use questions in a different way, to QCs and journalists and all the rest. I'm interested in where there are overlaps, but also what we can learn for people whose jobs, FBI hostage negotiators, chat show hosts, their life depends on asking smarter questions. What could we learn from them?
Yeah, I'm going to be reading it. I could do with asking some smarter questions. Yeah, be going on to my reading list. That's for sure.
Yeah, well, I'm just in the process of ramping up to writing right now. It's exciting because you don't know who's going to. As with fiction, you don't know what characters are going to appear. sometimes individuals or themes will appear that you had no idea were going to be there. So I'm looking forward to meeting them.
Right. I look forward to that coming out as well. I'll certainly be checking it out. As we unfortunately have to start drawing things towards a close, because you do have other things to do, and we also don't want the episode to go on and on and on. So let me ask you, what's the best way for people to come and find out more about you? Of course, they can check out your book, but how can they come and connect with you or find out more?
Sure. I mean, I would say that, my data storytelling business is called Insight Agents, and insightagents.co.uk is where I live and where there are branches off to book microsites and the rest of it. Or, LinkedIn, I'm very discoverable on LinkedIn. Sam Knowles Data Story is where you find me on LinkedIn.
Excellent. Well, we'll put links to all of that in the show notes for people as well. One thing that I always like to ask my guests for, other than your own books, is there a book that, or maybe more than one, that you would recommend to people to check out? Maybe related to what we're talking about, maybe completely unrelated, just something that you really like or has made an impact for you. What would you recommend?
So I'm going to give you two fiction books, and one of them is, you're going to say this is so infantile, but I was a big Roald Dahl fan growing up, and my favorite book until probably maybe it's still my favorite book, is Fantastic Mr. Fox, because I think it is a masterful piece of storytelling in many, many ways. I won't bore you for all the different ways I think it's a masterful piece of storytelling. That would be one. The other, so I had always promised and threatened to write books, and here I am on the verge of doing my third, but it took me until I was late into my 40s to actually work out how to do it. And I have a book coach and book whisperer. There's a woman called Beth Miller. And Beth is brilliant at helping people who have a chance who have something to say, to help them work out how to do it. I mean, for example, whenever I'm writing, with her permission, I text her my daily word count, and she will send me an encouraging, that's extraordinary, well done, or, a few more tomorrow and you'll be pushed past this. Anyway, so Beth's written, so she took 11 and a half years to write her first novel, and she now produces 2 or 3 books a year. And on holiday, I was lucky enough to actually leave these shores and go to Greece. And in Greece this August, I read her latest novel, which is called Starstruck. And it's all about a kind of a Beyoncé, but not actually Beyoncé, impersonator who swaps lives with the real Beyoncé, but not Beyoncé. And It is hilarious and entertaining. And it was just the book to read.
Sounds good. Some nice recommendations. I always like to get a bit of fiction in there as well. We can learn so much from fiction, just as much as we can often from reading non-fiction. So I like those recommendations too. As we wrap things up for today, if there's just one thing you hope that people will remember or take away from our conversation, hopefully more than one, but if there's just one thing that people take away, what would it be?
It would be that it's an old story telling not trick, but I've mentioned it 2 or 3 times. The one thing I would say is before you fire up PowerPoint, clearly, if you and I ruled the world, Johnny, it would be analog first. But before you even think about what you're going to say and in what form or structure you're going to say it, do this exercise of writing a pen portrait of the people that you're looking to persuade. And it might be in a political campaign, or it might be with a book or a blog or a presentation. Doesn't matter. Just write 150 words about what they're like, and then assess what you believe their genuine data tolerance is going to be.
It's a good way to approach it. Sam Knowles, it's been a real pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you so much for coming and being my guest and sharing your insights, wisdom, stories, and humor with us. We've really appreciated it. Thank you so much.
It's my great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for tuning in. I hope you've enjoyed the show and you got some value from that, and maybe a few clues about how to be telling story with datas, and some good, interesting stories from Sam there as well. It's been a great, fun show. Next episode, you're going to get to hear my conversation with Pam Warren. Now, this is something I have already broadcast live. The episode with Pam is somebody who has been very influential, and a lot of people in the UK will have heard about it, will have come across Pam before, especially if you're around about my age. She was involved in a very major train crash in the UK some years back, and she became a spokesperson for rail safety. She's going to tell us about how she went about creating and building influence to change things, to improve things, to make things safer for other people, and to have an impact on the government and on industry to change things for the better. A very powerful story of influence and persuasion, and a very powerful personal story as well from an incredible guest. So don't miss my chat with Pam Morrow next week. Do check out other episodes of the show. Please do support us by sharing out the show with your friends and your network. And most of all, if you found something that you can put into action from this week's episode, please do that. Let us know what you did. Tell us what you think of the show so we can keep improving it and making it better for you. And in the meantime, go and make great things happen. I'll see you next week.